All right, Shalom. All praise, honor, and glory goes to Yahweh by Hashem, Yahushua by Hashem, Rakah HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and salutation unto the hopeful elect. The first thing I'll say is that, Esau is the father of lies. Okay. And, going forward, although he may publish one thing, he's doing another. And that's something I've always learned from the apostles of Great Millstone, and really just, understanding that the wicked shall do wickedly. And so some information was passed to me the other day from some insiders in Esau's matrix, of wickedness, and how the coronavirus itself very well could be a cover up. And the cover up is because the area of the world in which was affected the most initially from the coronavirus was China. But China is also the hotbed, okay, for a lot of the 5G technology. And from what my sources have provided me, insight in that has shown that that was really the cause of people dying at a dramatic rate, was because essentially they've been microwaved, okay, millimeter microwaved from the 5G technology in which was rolling out in Wuhan, China. And so I ran across this video last night. I've actually watched it 5, 6, 7 times just because I wanted to really understand the principle behind what the guy was saying. I definitely agree with it, just because not only is it a science, okay, but it's also spiritual. And he's actually going to touch on a couple of points in which we definitely go into, as far as the makeup of the body and how technology in itself hasn't been around that long, but the side effects of it can and will alter the body. And I want to say even the elder Yashawamba did a video maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago going into how a lot of these foods in the air in which we breathe, and even the water in itself, actually is like a sleeper cell that can be activated by frequencies. Okay. And really that's what this topic goes into. But I'm gonna read a little bit about the summary down here at the bottom, bring out a quick scripture, play the video, and Lord willing, you brothers will be edified. It says, published on March 12th, 2020, Dr. Thomas Cohen, MD, hypothesizes that coronavirus may be history repeating itself and caused by 5G. Because through this rollout of the 5G, in which we've talked about, 5G in itself is really a weapon, because literally it could heat from many distances. Me and the elder Tazapah actually went into several lessons last year and the year before, going into the 4G technology, and how that strength of it really does cause a electronic blanket of some sorts to really oppress your blood cells and get into your the sweat ducts, okay, in the glands of the hairs of your skin. Okay, it essentially destroys them. But because it's at such a high level of energy or electronic or energy, or electronic frequency, you don't feel it. It's kind of like when you get sunburn, you can feel that there's a hotness, but you don't really see the side effects of that sunburn until you're out of the sun, hours and hours later, and you see your your skin being burnt. Okay. And so likewise with these 4G, 5G, and I even, went in a lesson a month ago about 6G. Okay. 6G technology. So all of these things are really just a form of destroying your skin and your blood cells, okay, without you really knowing it. And the devices in which you carry and wear on you actually intensify that as well. So It says Dr. Thomas Cohen, MD, hypothesizes that coronavirus may be history repeating itself and caused by 5G. Shot at the Health and Human Rights Summit in Tucson, Arizona on March 12th, 2020. Okay, camera, sound, and editing by Joshua Colvin. So I'm going to bring out a quick scripture and then we'll get back to the topic at hand. This is Job 15:35. It says, they conceive mischief and bring forth vanity, and their belly prepared deceit. Okay. So in their mind, they're preparing deceit. That's what these Edomites do. That's the driving force behind all in which they do, is to put out one idea, okay, to have people bite on. That's the reason why I said this is chess. This is not checkers. Okay. So when Esau puts out an idea, the idea typically in itself is to cover up another idea, or it buys him time to actually get his lie together for another agenda in which he's starting to roll out, either in concert or following that. You know, and something we always have to remember is that Esau, by the time something hits the public mainstream, he's already tested it. He's already prepared all of the narratives. Okay. He's prepared all the media circuits. He's prepared all of these crisis actors, you know, all of that to continue that lie. All right. So like I said, you know, without making this too long, I just wanted to kind of cover that real quick because I'm going to try to not stop the video as much, but there may be one or two spots where I'll actually stop and just have a little commentary.
Now, I have 10 minutes. I wasn't sure I was going to get to this stage, but I can't help but say something about this whole coronavirus thing, if you want me to. Yes. So, again, when you know Steiner, you have the answers to the test, but you have to then figure out the details. In 1918, after the huge, biggest pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918, Steiner was asked, what was this all about? And he said, well, viruses are simply excretions of a toxic cell. Viruses are pieces of DNA or RNA with a few other proteins. They bud out from the cell. They happen when the cell is poisoned. They are not the cause of anything. And the first way I would encourage you to think about this is if you are a famous dolphin doctor, right? And you have been studying dolphins in the Arctic Circle for hundreds of years, or at least a long time, and the dolphins were fine. And then they call you up, Fred, all the dolphins or a lot of the dolphins are dying in the Arctic Circle. Can you come and investigate? Right? And you have one question to ask. So, show of hands, how many of you would say, I want to investigate a dolphin to see the genetic makeup of that dolphin? Nobody, because that's stupid. How many of you would say, I want to see if this dolphin and that dolphin has a virus because it might be contagious and that's why all these dolphins are getting sick? That fellow. How many of you would say, excuse my French here, somebody put some shit in the water here? Like Exxon Valdez? Anybody? Everybody. Because that's what happened. And the cells get poisoned. They try to purify themselves by excreting debris, which we call viruses. If you go to the current theory of viruses called exosomes, and the latest head of the NIH giving a talk on the complexity of viruses, you will see this is perfectly in line with the current thinking on what a virus really is. I had a dramatic example of this when I was growing up. Right outside our house, there was a wetlands, and they were full of frogs, and the frogs kept me up at night, so I taped the windows, and they were, in the spring, they made a big racket. And then over time, the frogs were all gone. How many thinks the frogs had a genetic disease? How many think that frogs had a virus? How many think somebody put DDT into the water? That's what happened. Diseases are poisoning. It's one of the reasons why vaccines, so let me skip that for a minute. So what happened in 1918? There was a huge, in every pandemic in the last 150 years, there was a quantum leap in the electrification of the earth.
So that in itself is very, very important, because essentially what he's tying together is the leaps of technology has increased the leaps of sicknesses in the world. All right.
In the last 150 years, there was a quantum leap in the electrification of the earth. In 1918, late fall of 1917, there was the introduction of radio waves around the world. Whenever you expose any biological system to a new electromagnetic field, you poison it, you kill some, and the rest go into a kind of suspended animation, so that, interestingly, they live a little bit longer and sicker. And then starts in World War II with the next pandemic, with the introduction of radar equipment all over the earth, blanketing the entire earth in radar fields. First time humans have ever been exposed to that. In 1968, there was the Hong Kong flu, and it was the first time the Earth has a protective layer in the Van Allen belt, which essentially integrates the cosmic fields from the sun and the Earth, from the moon and Jupiter, etc., integrates that and essentially distributes that to the living beings of the Earth. And we put satellites emitting radioactive frequencies in the Van Allen belt. Within 6 months, we had a new viral pandemic. Why viral? Because the people are poisoned, they excrete toxins, they look like viruses. People think it's a flu epidemic. In the 1918 epidemic, the Boston Health Department decided to investigate the contagiousness of this. So they, believe it or not, took hundreds of people with the flu, and they sucked the snot out of their nose and injected it into the healthy people who didn't have the flu, and not one time could they make the next person sick. They did this over and over again, and they were not able to demonstrate contagion. They even did it with horses who apparently got the Spanish flu, and they put bags over their head, and the horses sneezed in the bag, and they put the bag over the next horse, and not one horse got sick. You can read about this in a book called The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Furstenberg, who chronicles all the steps in the electrification of the earth and how within 6 months there was a new flu pandemic all over the world. And when you hear the normal explanations, how did it go from Kansas to South Africa in 2 weeks? So the entire world got the symptoms at the same time, in spite of the fact that the mode of transportation was horseback and boats, and there's no explanation for it. They just say, we don't know how that happened. But when you think about it, with these radio waves and other frequencies that some of you have in your pocket and on your wrist, you can send a signal to Japan and it arrives instantaneously. So any of you who don't believe, there is an electromagnetic field that communicates globally within seconds, just is not paying attention to this. And I will only finish by pointing out that there has been a dramatic and quantum leap in the last 6 months with the electrification of the earth. And I'm sure a lot of you know what that is. It's called 5G, where they now have 20,000 radiation emitting satellites, just like the radiation emitting thing in your pocket and on your wrist and that you use all the time. That is not compatible with health. I'm sorry.
You know, and that's another reason why, even as we were doing those lessons last year and the year before, there was so much kickback from the community in itself, because people knew that they were posting those 5G towers in their communities, but there wasn't any tests ran on any of this 5G technology or even 4G technology. Okay. And people really started to be concerned because they knew that with that type of frequency, either low emitting microwaves or frequency, or even high emitting frequency waves, it was going to do damage to them directly, and what the government was trying to push was that they were doing this for the convenience of the people, to where people wouldn't lose connectivity. And, basically they were starting the whole Internet of Things. And, the whole Internet of Things is where you can go from anywhere, whether it be your car, grocery store, a house, school, anywhere you go, you will not lose connectivity, but everything will be tracking and monitoring you as well. So, this point in which he's making is very strong, because it shows that there are people, scholars, okay, that understand what agenda Esau, the so-called white man, is promoting. But as long as people are paying attention to the coronavirus, they're not going to think about 5G. And by the time the coronavirus is over with, the whole 5G technology and the layout and the beta testing will have been done. And Esau will now be able to roll out the RFID microchip and already have the infrastructure and the software and the hardware all available, and the connectivity and the ability to track and monitor without any delays or any latency. And right at that point now, he's had people go weeks, if not months, without food and without, the pleasantries of life. And so people are going to be salivating to actually get back to that system. But this also goes back to Esau's problem, reaction, solution methodology, where he's created the problem, but he's also created the reaction to the problem. And now he's going to institute the solution, and that solution ultimately being the RFID microchip. But he has to keep the people's mind on something else, the coronavirus, while he's continuing to enhance and improve the 5G technology, to where even if there are some casualties, especially as it was in China and across the globe, he's okay with that, as long as when he needs the system to be up and running, it's up and running. Okay. So I'm gonna play that part again real quick. Matter of fact, I'm gonna bring out a quick scripture. This is Isaiah 32 and 6. It says, "For the vile person will speak villainy, and in his heart will work iniquity to practice hypocrisy." Because he's telling you one thing and he's doing another. "And to utter error against the Lord, to make empty the soul of the hungry." Wow. "To make empty the soul of the hungry, and he will cause the drink of the thirsty to fail." That's why people are going and buying up all the, water bottles and things, and, basically emptying out these stores, because they don't know what's going to happen here in the next couple months, because they're literally watching the TV 24/7. Verse 7, "The instruments also of the cherub are evil. He deviseth wicked devices to destroy the poor with lying words." Okay, it's media, him controlling the narrative. It says, "Even when the needy speak right," and that's us telling the truth to our people, giving them warning of who our adversary is, who this damn devil is. All right. And that he is not on your side, to never trust thine enemy. Verse 8, it says, "But the liberal deviseth liberal things, and by liberal things shall he stand." Yeah. And all of this is just to prove that Esau's society in itself is a land of lies. It's a land of confusion, and it's a land of deceits. Because Esau, the so-called white man, as scripture says, the wicked are estranged from the womb. Okay. They go forth speaking lies as soon as they be born. Okay. So you can imagine the ability that Esau has to lie now. Okay. Versus when he was first born, the generations of the Edomites, and where they are today. Like, he can lie to you straight in your face, and just as he does on TV, and everyone believes it. But this lie in itself is really to cause you to become more dependent on Esau's program, to where he can usher in the solution, being an RFID microchip. Okay, so let's play this last part in the end.
Sorry to say it, it's not a thing in your pocket and on your wrist and that you use all the time. That is not compatible with health. I'm sorry to say it, it's not compatible with health. That is a water destructuring device. And for any of you who say, yeah, well, we're not electrical beings, we're just physical matter, then don't bother doing an EKG or an EEG or a nerve conduction test, because we are electrical beings and the chemicals are only the byproduct of those electrical impulses. And I'll finish with, anybody want to make one guess as to where the first completely blanketed 5G city in the world was? Exactly. So when you start thinking about this, we are in an existential crisis here, folks, the likes of which humankind has never seen. And I don't want to go all Old Testament prophet on you, but this is something that is unprecedented. The putting of 100,000 satellites in the very blanket of the Earth. And by the way, as I was going to say earlier, this actually has something to do with the vaccine question. And this got brought home to me because about a year ago or so, I had a patient who came in who was totally fine, a surfer and all, and then he works as an electrician putting in Wi-Fi systems for very wealthy people. Electricians have a very high mortality rate, but he was fine. And then he breaks his arm and he gets a metal plate put in his arm. 3 months later, he couldn't get out of bed and was total, heart irregularities, just total collapse.
Now listen very closely to this next part.
The susceptibility has to do with how much metal you have in your body, as well as the quality of the water in your cells. So if you start injecting aluminum in people, they become receptors for absorbing increased electromagnetic fields. And that is a perfect storm for the kind of deterioration of the species, which is what we're now experiencing.
That's heavy, man. Because for the longest, Esau, the so-called white man, has been putting chemtrails into the skies that are full of what? Aluminum barium oxide, okay? Very fragmented particles, okay, that literally are not visible to the eye, okay, but are being inhaled and digested and then like it lands on everything that you touch. And so all of these things can easily be digested into our bodies. And with the increased frequencies of the 4 and 5G technology, at any given time, Esau can, just like you would turn up the dial, okay, on the radio to increase the volume. He could literally increase that volume of the frequency of those towers that literally are in your neighborhoods and everywhere around you, okay, and that connectivity with your cell phones and with your iPad and with your iWatch and every device that you have now could essentially heat up those fragmented pieces of metal in your body and cause a deterioration internally, which would cause you to die immediately. Because now your body literally is excreting the virus or any virus, because it's now being artificially heated up. And those cells that were once not that are not accustomed to that type of heat are going to try to defeat that oncoming virus or fever, okay, within your body. So it's going to try to cool it off, and then it's ultimately going to lose. The virus is going to spread, and that's how the theory of 5G causing people to die in China and across the globe has stemmed from, which is the escalation of technology in a concentrated area at the control of, the wizard behind the curtain of Oz. I'm gonna play that one more time.
3 months later, he couldn't get out of bed. The putting of 100,000 satellites in the very blanket of the Earth. And by the way, as I was going to say earlier, this actually has something to do with the vaccine question. And this got brought home to me because about a year ago or so, I had a patient who came in who was totally fine, a surfer and all, and then he works as an electrician putting in Wi-Fi systems for very wealthy people. Electricians have a very high mortality rate, but he was fine. And then he breaks his arm and he gets a metal plate put in his arm. 3 months later.
So that was the key. The key was a metal plate was placed in his arm, but because he was already working on 5G towers beforehand, he wasn't as affected as much. However, with that metal plate now being a part of his body and those frequencies now circulating around him, it started to destroy those sweat glands, those sweat ducts in his body, and ultimately destroyed his composition to where ultimately, I don't know if he said he died or not, but he had complications that he didn't have previously.
He couldn't get out of bed and was total, heart irregularities, just total collapse. The susceptibility has to do with how much metal you have in your body, as well as the quality of the water in your cells. So if you start injecting aluminum in people,
and let me say this as well real quick, just because it came to my mind. The water that you're buying at these stores could be very much have millimeter particles of aluminum in it as well, So just, you just got to realize, we're fighting against the devil, but through Yahweh Shem Yahushua, we've already overcome this devil. But, this information in itself is just to give you an awareness of the depth, okay, that Esau, the so-called white man, searches, to create more and more wickedness. This is not just a straight shot with Esau, okay? He's going to hit you from every angle, okay? That's why in Ephesians, it's important to have on the full armor of Yahweh Shem Yahushua, okay?
Become receptors for absorbing increased electromagnetic fields, and that is a perfect storm for the kind of deterioration of the species, which is what we're now experiencing. And I'm just going to finish with one more thing, which I like too, is a quote from Rudolf Steiner. And by the way, this was around 1917, so there was a different time. In times when there were no electrical currents, when the air was not swarming with electrical influences, we're talking 1917, it was easier to be human. For this reason, in order to be human at all today, it is necessary to expend much stronger spiritual capacities than was necessary a century ago. So I'll just leave you with whatever you can do to increase your spiritual capacities, because it's really damn hard to be a human being these days. So thanks for listening.
So, that in itself is the information, but as you can tell, in my honest opinion, he provided the information and then even tied it to, the spiritual aspect. And because ultimately he knows that there's an agenda to destroy people. Okay. There's no other reason why 5G technology is necessary. There's a greater, efficient, more positive, okay, utilization of that time and resources, globally for people, but not to increase the speed of their connectivity on their cell phone, or if they're using Google or they're using Waze maps, okay, to improve the sense of direction in the land. All of these things are being done as war strategies, and he even provided the insight of how the amount of metals that you have in your body will also induce or be a catalyst for absorption of these micromillimeter waves. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, that is the information in itself. I'm going to leave you brothers with one scripture, and then we're going to roll on out of here, man. Lord willing, you brothers were edified. This is Ephesians chapter 6. Verse 16, it says, above all, take the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. So that shield of faith, that's really what we utilize, day in and day out, living by what Yahweh Shem Yahushua has prescribed for us in the scriptures. But yeah, it's going to be completely necessary that we have our faith at an all-time high, not wavering in any decision, being in order as much as we possibly can, and just understanding that, we're in these days of evil, but, I at least wanted to get this information out to you, Akim. When I first watched this video, it was at 5,000 views. And that was maybe, I don't know, let's just say 8 hours ago, and, now it's been 23 hours and it's now at 12,000 views, and so information like this is really going to disrupt Esau's program and agenda. I don't know if this is 100% accurate. It could just be, a theory. But like I had said, the source in which I received it from is a insider. I'll just leave it at that. And so, I wouldn't even have looked up this information. But I did think about it prior to the information coming across, but didn't connect all the dots. But, seeing this information as is, to me, definitely is something beneficial, for brothers to be aware of. So, Lord willing, this is edifying for the elect. Next time I'm going to say shalom.